I mean, that leads us straight to our defensive line. So we're not going to include our edge rushers. That will be included in next week's episode. So what we're going to include here is nose tackle, defensive tackle, and the F or defensive end is what it's called. Where do you want to start? Do we want to start on the bad or the good, or the met or the great?
I say let's start with the great. Let's start at F. I guess it depends what you consider great. I guess it depends where you're considering to be the greatest.
We'll start at F because I think it's the deepest.
Yeah.
I mean, so our starting defensive end at F is going to be Tyreek Sapp. Highest returning grade on PFF for us for a player since I think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson did in his 2017 going into 2018 season. I mean, he may not be like a projected top 10 pick like Caleb Banks is by a lot of people I know. He's still a projected first round pick or early second round pick. Had 7 sacks last year, and I think with the guys around him starting to step up at the end of last year, if that continues, I think we're looking at Tyree Sapp possibly having a double-digit sack season, which we haven't had since Jonathan Grenard, unless Brian Cox did it in 2020. I think Cox may have done it in 2020 because I remember it was like very disappointing of a season, but then it was like, oh, he still had like 10 sacks. And it was like, because of Grantham's defensive system, that was a lot of blitz, allowing you to get more sacks.
Yeah.
Let me see. I got defense right here. Oh, no, not even close. Cox had 4 sacks. Zach Carter had 5.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at Sapp, like you said, I mean, he's not really currently projected as a top 10 pick. I think he could get there. I mean, maybe the odds have shifted, but I think we've talked about this. I think even when the initial, like right after the draft, when the 2026 draft odds for the first overall pick came out, Tyreek Sapp was like top 10 in the best odds for the first overall pick. It was like 6,000 to 1 or something like that, which is pretty good. Mm-hmm. So I think with him, like you look at what he did last year, he wasn't like a focal point in the sense that I'm not sure he was like a clear, just designated get after the quarterback guy like you sometimes see. And in spite of that, like really productive. I mean, 7 sacks, 13 TFL. That's a lot. 47 tackles as a defensive lineman. Like that's a lot of production, man.
He graded out as a better run defender than pass rusher, which he's still a great pass rusher. Yeah, but he's the best run defender on this team and one of the best in the country.
And that's kind of my point, to produce like 7 sacks while still being an all around, like not a Harold Perkins, like not a pass rushing specialist. Really good production there. I mean, I think to me, if he's healthy, double digit sacks seems like a no brainer here. Especially because I think I don't want to say maybe it is a little bit less deep than it was last year. I don't know. I mean, you lose I guess looking at the edges in general, like not just the F position, but like, you think it's more deep this year than it was last year?
Jack Pyburn was no pass rush. He had 1 sack. It was against FSU. And I mean, Searcy was okay. I mean, maybe we'll see Searcy develop more another year at Texas A&M, but I think we'll get into it next week. So, but I mean, the edge room, like now you're looking at George Gums, who in limited pass rush snaps still had 5, which was more. So I'm expecting him to go up. And then you have like LJ McCray, who 3 sites has a top 10 player, 2 as a top 6 player coming out of high school. Like you're expecting him in year 2. With how much money we're paying him, you're expecting him to at least get some good snaps and play some good football this year. Then Jaden Woods as well, the freshman now I'm really high on.
And with all those guys, you can't really afford to like make your emphasis, like your focus on just stopping Tyreek Sapp. Like you can't really double him up. You'll get burned otherwise. So again, if he's healthy, I think double digit sacks is like almost a lock in my opinion.
Yeah. Now, when I said like he's not like I don't know if he's a top 10 pick. I think it's because he's a little bit of a tweener-ish. Like some comps I've seen so he's 6'2.5", which is not small at all, but like you're looking at the guys that we're trying to replace him with. Cam James, who's going to be his backup, is 6'5", 6'6". You look at who we just got or who we're targeting in the recruiting world. Jaraylon McCoy is nearly 6'7". So for his position, he's not as tall as other guys. And a comp I saw for him was Calais Campbell, who played in Saxville. It was also 6'6", if I'm not mistaken.
He's
Calais
big.
Campbell was 6'8".
He's big.
Calais
Yeah,
Campbell
I
was
was gonna say
6'8".
he's big. Yeah.
So he plays bigger than he is, which I think maybe something that holds him from being a potential top 10 pick.
Yeah, I mean that's a question.
Sorry,
No, sorry, I didn't have a ton to add there. I was just saying that's definitely like the main question with him. I agree.
and then we go to his backup. This is like, I think, where it really separates itself among the positions we're going to talk about today. You have Cameron James, who's 6'5.5", 272, going into his third year. I thought Cam James played phenomenally last year as a backup to Tyreek Sapp, and I think Cam James also is going to allow you some position flexibility. We'll get to it later, but you may have some questions about the depth on your defensive tackle spot. I think he can also move a little bit here and there. So I think you have someone that you're going to lose Sapp after this year. I am perfectly fine replacing him with Cam James unless he just like disappoints this year. But based on what we saw last year, I think Cam James could start. I remember when the transfer portal first opened, a couple of names I heard were TJ Searcy and Cam James. And I was like, I got it for both. I mean, I understood it for James because I think he could go start at a lot of other Power 4 programs. And I was like, it would hurt our depth, obviously, and us next year. But I was super excited when he did not end up entering the transfer portal. But it's like, I think he's a really good pass rusher. I think he's a really good run stopper. And learning behind a veteran, Tyreek Sapp's in his 5th year here now. That's another thing with Sapp. He's also going to be 24 during the draft. So that's an age thing. But like, Cam James has the sky high potential, has things. He's already put out good film, and he's learning under one of the better players on this team.
Yeah, Cam James was, I think, when we did postseason superlatives, I think he was my like most underrated or something along those lines.
I think Jaden Robinson was, or Robinson was mine. Maybe I don't remember.
Actually, no, I think you might be right. I think you might be right that it was Jaden Robinson, but Cameron James also, I think,
maybe most improved.
Maybe. Regardless, I think he's a candidate for that superlative from last year because I think, yeah, like you said, a guy that kind of buried in the mix a little bit, but when he was on the field, I thought was pretty solid. Like you got to feel pretty good about between the 1-2 punch of a first rounder in Sapp, a likely first rounder in Sapp, and then Cam James, like looking pretty good. So maybe you have a point about depth there with Cam James, hopefully taking another leap this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to find the amount of snaps Cam James played last year. He played 356 snaps, so he played a lot of football last year. Tyreek Sapp played 414, so he's just like 50 snaps lower than Tyreek Sapp.
There.
No, so I think he's gonna get on the field. I think he's gonna not gonna be the same as Sapp, obviously, but because with the depth issues at defensive tackle, Sapp's gonna get on the field more. We're not 100% sure. I think he's an F. You got, was it UMass transfer? Kofi Asare?
Yeah.
Was it from UMass?
Yeah, UMass, yeah.
You got UMass transfer Kofi Asare, who's nearly 6'5", 246. Yeah, it says it right there. First year here. I've heard they really like him. But again, we've talked about Sapp and Cam James as two guys that, I mean, are the backup. Cam James could start at a lot of SEC schools and a lot of Power 4 places going into this year. So to have Kofi Asare as your potential third rep guy at that position, you're looking at a really phenomenal F. And I've heard they like him a lot. So I think next year, maybe when he's splitting snaps with like Cam James and stuff, is really when we could see him in his senior year, assuming he doesn't transfer out, show up a bit more.
Yeah, Asare seems like a guy with some potential, but it's just like he didn't really produce a lot at UMass last year against lesser competition. So it's not really hard to imagine a world where he kind of just gets buried here, at least this season. But I do think, the fact that, we're not exactly sure where he's going to play. Maybe he does have a little positional versatility and can kind of fit in at Jack or at F. And if that's the case, maybe being a sort of third man at both those spots, third or fourth man at both those spots could sort of get him on the field more. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I'd kind of expect that you're going to see him less than you'll see Sapp and Cam James. I think probably the third guy up there But you would think with the way they operate, probably still factor in the rotation to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, he's a bit smaller, right? How big is he? How big was he?
So like 250?
246. So yeah, I don't think he has any flexibility to go out and play defensive tackle, but also has some flexibility to go out and play jack if need be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like he can play F or Jack. He could play F or Jack as like the third man, kind of, is what I'm saying. Potentially.
So we have a lot of positional flexibility there with the F and the Jack and some D tackle there. So you're looking really good there at the F spot. And then you also have true freshman Jalen Wiggins, who, let me get his ranking right here out of high school. It was pretty high. His composite ranking was 139, top 140 player. He's out of Tallahassee, so yeah, go Knowles. 6'4", 275 now. I mean, again, that position is just so deep that it's going to be tough to see him getting much playing time. But he has size. I mean, again, he could go on the defensive tackle. As a true freshman, I could see him bulking up maybe a bit more and playing defensive tackle later on. Because he's already at, where is he? He's already at 270. So, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see him bulk up a bit more and play some defensive tackle. I know they really like cross-training these defensive linemen. I mean, obviously there's a difference between F and nose tackle, but you can play some F and defensive tackle there. So if you're really worried about like Brandon Bett or maybe someone gets injured, hopefully not, but he could have some movability there to defensive tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I think with him, it's like, yeah, if you're like making a bet about it, he probably doesn't factor into the rotation significantly this year. But like, if there's one thing we've seen about Billy, to his credit, is that they won't hesitate to put the young guys in there if they think that they can play, and they think that they give the team a better chance to win than some of the older guys. So like, if he comes in and looks better than Cam James, looks better than Kofi Asari, like I have no doubt he will play. So I think he'll have that opportunity. It's more that I have enough faith in those guys above him that I just don't really see it happening this year. But I guess we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Did you mean to say bet like Brandon Bett when you said that a minute ago?
No, that came out perfectly. Not. Yeah, that just worked out.
All right. Is that the best position on the team? F?
I mean, maybe you could argue like middle linebacker.
I think linebacker's a lot less proven.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I mean, like, I think there's probably a pretty strong case for that to be the best. Maybe, I mean, yeah, because even like I don't really feel great about, like, I feel good about the starting five along the offensive line. I'm not sure I'd say there's like a guards or tackles position that I feel like great about the position as a whole with all the depth. Like the depth's kind of unproven along the offensive line.
If you had a player on Cam James actually no, never mind. So I think we do. I don't know. I mean, the entire offensive line, it's really close between like, because we're just talking about one position to five players in the O-line. So I don't know. I mean, it's real. I mean, this is like, I think
I don't think you can't put the offensive tackles ahead of F, right? Like the depth at F.
I don't think you can put the guards either.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So,
and like, I mean, the interior. I mean, you have Slaughter, who's the best center in the country. So it's like, I think if Sapp takes another step, then it's like no question, yes.
Yeah.
If Sapp
is a definitive first round pick by like November, then yeah, I think it's almost certainly the best position group on the team.
If he goes from like a player to an A+ player, that's like the difference right there between that. All right, next we'll get onto the defensive tackle. Now, looking at the roster here, they have the trader DeAndre Robinson on here, but we're not gonna be able to talk about him. But I mean, we all know who the starter is. I had him my number one ranked player heading into the 2025. I almost said 2023 season. Caleb Banks. Banks sits at nearly 6'6", 329 pounds. I mean, there's one specific draft analyst I watch, Hail Mary podcast or Hail Mary Sports now. I've watched him since like 2021. He has Caleb Banks as a top 10 player in the NFL draft or going into this draft. I mean, Caleb Banks is upside is just through the roof because he's a really good run defender as well, but he has a lot of explosiveness to rush the passer. He has a lot of moves that not a lot of defensive tackles with that big of a body can make. He has that next level top tier potential, not just for college, but like the NFL as well. I mean, he's as good of a defensive tackle, starting in a tackle as you can get in college football.
Yeah, getting Caleb Banks back was probably
if you get if you get what he had at the end of the year on a consistent level.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
Because he was good throughout like the first 2/3 of the season, but at the end of the season he was elite. If you get that elite portion, then he's going to be a top 10 pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting Caleb Banks back was probably like pound for pound the most impactful thing that happened for the Gators this offseason. Because not only because of how good of a player he is, but like, man, we go from our tone talking about this defensive line is a lot different if Caleb Banks is not on it. Because all of a sudden that interior looks like not just like, because like right now it's still probably the biggest question mark on the roster, the other interior spot alongside Caleb Banks, but the entire interior of the line is not just like a question mark. It's like a gaping hole if you don't have Caleb Banks.
Although if you didn't have Caleb Banks, you probably would have went into the portal and got
that's probably that's maybe Keyshawn Silver, but like, do you like even feel great if it's like I feel nearly as good with like a Keyshawn Silver level player as I would with like
who were the best defensive tackles in the portal?
I guess he was more of a nose. Yeah, I don't even know who the guys that would be like the comps to Caleb Banks were off the top of my head.
I'm pulling it up right here. Player rankings, 2025, transfer portal. Oh wait, you gotta hit transfer portal. There we go. If it will load, there we go. Top at D line. The top D lineman in the transfer portal. So Keyshawn Silver was one. Then David Gusta from Washington State, who looks more like who was 6'3", 302, so D tackle. And then Williams Nawarni, who was just a 5-star off high school. Bernard Gooden from USF. David Blay from Louisiana. Yeah, I mean, you're either looking for a guy who was a really high, like a Nawarni, or I said someone else who was also high. Jaheim Otis was also like a near 5-star. So you're either going after a guy who was like a very high prospect who, I mean, Nawarni spent 1 year at Missouri, so it's not like he was a bust, or Otis only like a year or two. So they're either getting a highly ranked guy who just didn't play in year one, or you're going after a good, like, mid-tier college starter. So you're not feeling good about it if you're getting a transfer guy.
Yeah, I mean, hearing that list, I would be willing to bet pretty strongly if Caleb Banks had opted to enter the transfer portal, he would have been the number 1 ranked defensive lineman available. So essentially keeping between getting him and
Banks in the portal. Where did we get that from?
No, I'm just saying, like, hypothetically,
gotcha.
like I'm saying, if you don't have like no one you could have theoretically gotten in the event Banks left would have been even a lateral move. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think that was massive. I mean, essentially like keeping him and guys like him and other guys like Slaughter and Sapp from going to the draft or whatever was like landing an elite transfer. In terms of the impact.
Better than landing an elite transfer.
Yeah, better than landing. Yeah, probably, because you know what you're getting there. So yeah, I mean, I think his impact, I think I had him number 2 in my preseason rankings behind Lagway. But I think you had him
3. I think you had Slaughter 2.
You're right. I think you're right, actually. I think I did. But so I think I had him number 1 on the defense regardless. Yeah, I mean, I think pretty clearly, a guy who, despite, a lot of defensive tackles don't necessarily like produce a ton. He produced, 4.5 sacks last year. Yes, 4.5 sacks, 7 TFL. Yeah. So, very solid production for an interior guy. Like, just everything you look for. He's impactful. He's disruptive. I think is a focal point of the Florida defense this year.
Yeah. Now you're looking at his backup. So we all thought it was going to end up being DeAndre Robinson, which 4-star out of high school, played decent last year as a freshman. You're looking to take that next step. But he ends up transferring to go start for North Carolina, Bill Belichick. So we bring in Brandon Bett from Baylor, who's 6'5". He's not on the UF roster yet, or he's not on the roster page yet until the fall practice starts, so he won't be then. From last year, Baylor had him listed at 6'5", 300. Played really good his freshman season, or really good for a freshman, and they expected him to take a big leap, but ended up being academically ineligible for all but the bowl game last year, so we didn't really get to see him play. Matt Rule was really excited about him going into last year. I mean, not Matt Rule, Dave Aranda, sorry, was real excited about him. Dave Aranda. Wrong LSU.
I didn't even catch that at first. That took me a minute to catch. I didn't even notice you said that.
But yeah, Dave Aranda, I mean, he's a defensive mind, right? I'm not mistaken there.
Yeah, he's an elite defensive mind. He's an elite defensive mind, yeah.
So if Dave Aranda is excited about you going into a season, then I'm expecting that you're decent. You're going to be pretty decent there. So I don't know if he's going to be better than what Robinson was going to be. He's another year older, so some more maturity there probably. It's wait and see mode, I guess. That's really all you can say there.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the Robinson for Bet thing kind of feels like a wash. I feel like you're getting one guy who's shown flashes, but not a ton of experience, for another guy who's shown flashes, but not necessarily like a ton of experience. So, I mean, I feel like that was fine to me. I mean, Robinson leaving kind of sucked. That surprised me. That kind of came out of left field. But when they landed Bet, I was like, okay, that probably leaves you about where you started. So I mean, again, we'll see. I mean, I'm not worried about the academic stuff if he was able to get cleared ultimately to play at Baylor at the end of last season. So I don't see any reason to think that's going to continue to be an issue for him this year. But we'll just have to see. Him not being there in the spring probably hurts a little bit, just because it opens the door for other guys to maybe push. But I think you're probably still going to see him be the guy that kind of is next up there after Banks.
Yeah, so then we go. Oh, so a name I forgot to mention because he's a true freshman who wasn't on the roster. Joseph Mbachu. What's his size? Let's go off 247 because he's not on the roster. He was at least 6'4.5", 275. So probably a defensive tackle with positional.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good.
I heard a lot of people. I heard a lot of people say that they think his physicality, his size, is good enough to play day one. So I think he could play there in emergency. And then you also have Jeremiah McLeod, Mbachu was 254 in the composite. Jeremiah McLeod. Was it McLeod or McLeod? I think it's McLeod.
Jeremiah McLeod.
He is on the roster, so I can pull up that right there. I forgot about that. But we have him. What's his height? Nearly 6'3", 280. So for the size difference, yeah, he's about that size there to play defensive tackle as a true freshman. Also, I think some positional flexibility a little bit for F. Yeah, I mean, they're both 4 stars. A bit higher on Mbachu than McLeod, although Georgia wanted McLeod. I mean, people predicted Georgia to flip him, but if Florida didn't go on that win streak to end the year, he probably would have flipped, but Florida was able to hold on to McLeod. Again, you're probably seeing one of these two guys at least get some solid playing time.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to get good film out of one of them. I think J.L. Chapman might be one of the best defensive coordinators or defensive line coaches in the country from a development and recruiting standpoint. But one of McLeod or Mbachu are going to have to play by need, and you're hoping that one of them ends up giving you solid SEC minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm probably higher on Mbachu in the long term anyway, but I think I maybe would be a little bit more high on McLeod making the impact this year, just because he was there for spring. He's kind of has that inside track at the moment over both Mbachu and Bet. Like that kind of opens the door for him completely to step into that rotation, just because it hasn't been a complete group in the spring. So, I mean, I don't know exactly what kind of progress he made, but if I had to bet on one of them making the impact, I did it again. But if I had to bet on one of them making the impact, I would probably lean on McLeod because just because he's been there and had the opportunity to go through spring without Brandon Bet there.
I thought McLeod was ranked a lot lower. He was ranked 298. I thought he was in like the mid 300s. So only like 50 spots lower than Mbachu. But yeah, I mean, he's probably day one ready more compared to Mbachu, and not just on the fact that McLeod was here in the spring, but when he recruited, Mbachu was unranked when we offered him and when he committed, I'm pretty sure. So it was a newer player to football, but we'll see what ends up happening there. You have the pieces to have some decent depth, but it's not as good as you would hope.
Yeah.
And it also is impacted by the fact that we go to the nose tackle position. You're probably starting Jamari Lyons, who, if you told me that 2 years ago, I'm thinking that's probably a good thing. But he's coming off that ACL injury. We haven't listed at 6'4", 6'3.5", 308. He's a lot smaller than I thought he would be. He looked a lot. What was his size his freshman year or 2 years ago when he played in 2023? Jamari Lyons was right here, D line. 6'4", 305. So he hasn't put on the weight, but I mean, the injury is probably why. I mean, it's pretty easily to understand why. So you're probably thinking he's putting some weight on over the summer and since spring. So he'll probably maybe get to like 15, 20, 315, 320 there. But I think Lyons, if he was your backup, you'd be very excited. Or Boreau, who was our backup last year. Boreau played some really good minutes, I thought, as a true freshman. Now, can one of them step up and be a really good starter or a good starter? Can they, or really the question is, can they not be a weakness? Because if you just put them next to Banks, Sapp, and Gums or McCray or Woods coming off the edge, you're looking really good there on that defensive line if he can just be a neutral player on that team. Now, if you're getting better than that, which you hope for, then you're looking really good, which what we saw from his Redford freshman season was him being a potential guy that's a really good player for us. I actually, a bit off, not off topic, but Walter Picks, if you know them, they released a mock draft for the 2026 mock draft. One of the worst mock drafts. It had not Eugene Wilson. It had Elijah Badger in it, who was just in the draft. Like, and it had
and got picked, right?
No, he was undrafted.
He was undrafted. Okay, I thought he slid in the 7th round.
No, but they had a bunch of misspelled. Can you guess how they had Jamari Lyons spelled? It's only the first name.
It's only the first name they spelled wrong. Was it like with a Y at the end? Like, how do you? I would think they would have just spelled lions like the animal.
It's not even like a misspelling because it's a name. They called him Jabari Lyons.
Oh, they just called him the wrong name. Oh, okay.
Like, I mean the B and M are close on a keyboard, I guess, but like they had a bunch of misspelling. I mean, I told you they had Elijah Badger. I mean, and they called him Jabari Lyons again. Lyons didn't even play last year, and he split snaps with KM Jackson in 2023. Like, having Lyons as a 2nd round pick is a very interesting take there. But if you're getting a 2nd round pick in Jamari Lyons, then this is the best defensive line in college football.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think looking at Jamari Lyons and Jabari Lyons and the nose tackle position, I think. This isn't, we're not really breaking new ground here. I think I think most people listening to this agree that the nose tackle spot is the biggest question mark on the team, like by a pretty wide margin. Like I don't even
biggest
think pretty hard
starting question mark, at least.
Yeah. At the top, like I mean, I'd say like the 2 deep it's the biggest question mark 2 deep. I'd say all in all that we've got. But like with that being said, like it's not, I don't think it necessarily is going to be bad or even like, okay. Like, I mean, it's not like there's just no one there. It's not like they don't have guys that they've been developing to potentially take over that position. I mean, you've got Lyons, who unfortunately was robbed of a year of his development last year. And then Boreau, who, impressed as much as you can playing kind of sporadic snaps as a true freshman there at that spot. So I think both of those guys, you look at it and it's like, doesn't take a massive leap in logic to see either of them being pretty good this year. It's just by far the least proven. I mean, we just know very little about either of these guys, and how they're going to handle being like, how either of them would handle being like every down players in the SEC. That I think kind of remains to be seen. So until we see that, I think it's liable to be the I guess I should say could be the biggest liability on the team. But I don't necessarily think we will be thinking that way by the end of the season. Like, I don't know if in November we'll be sitting there going nose tackle is the worst position on the team. Like, I'm not even saying that I think there's one that I specifically think is going to be worse. I'm just saying it's not too hard to imagine one or both of those guys having like breakout seasons. I don't think that's like that, outside the lines of realism.
Yeah, I think you're going to end up seeing us play, like small ball without a true nose tackle out there. You also got Tavares Brown, who's nearly 6'7", 290. Flexibility of D tackle, nose tackle there. But I mean, I don't know how much we should get into this with Stephon Shivers because the situation that's happening there. So we just won't mention his name until we get like official word on what's happening there. But that's why we're bringing in Jameer Perez, who's 6'4", 340 already in this recruiting class. Maybe we'll go after another nose tackle. It's like I thought we saw some good football from Moreau. Worst case needs to be they're just neutrals. Because if they're just neutral players, you can still let your other three guys in the D line and edge out coming out there be possibly elite players and creating havoc in the backfield.
And again, they don't even have to be great for them to make an impact just because of how much attention all those other guys are going to draw. Like maybe they're the beneficiaries of that. So, but yeah, they just can't be like straight up liabilities. They can't be guys that weigh the unit down by being out there. But otherwise, I think, and we'll get into the other spots on the defense in the coming weeks, but I think really outside of that position, you're looking at a defense that if healthy should be good to very good, if not great.
Yeah, it just depends. How would you grade the entire defensive line? What did we give the O-line? I mean, we grade them individually. I think we gave an A-.
That sounds right. I think so. I was thinking about this. I kind of go back and forth between A- and B+, just because we're talking about three positions and one of them we have major questions about. But I'm going to go A- because I think the strength, obviously at the top with the starters of the other two positions, but even the depth of the other two positions is good enough that I think it outweighs the overall, like the overall confidence I have in this unit outweighs the questions I have at the nose tackle spot. So I think I'm sitting at A- because I think whether that spot works out or not, I think this is going to be an above average to potentially, very good unit.
Yeah. Also, I think A- is a good spot to be at there. I mean, you have potentially 2 A+ players in Sapp and Banks. So it just depends on what you're getting from that nose tackle. If you're getting like a B on that nose tackle spot, then you're probably talking about an A+ unit. I mean, an A to A+ unit. So
100%.
Because right now we're looking at that nose tackle as like a C.
Yeah, that's probably what I would get. If you asked me to like grade that unit individually, I'd maybe go C+ because there's some recruiting pedigree there at least, but like I guess
it's not like we're playing walk-ons.
Yeah, but I'm trying to remember, I'm trying to remember how highly recruited
Lyons is a 4-star.
Was he? Okay.
He was in like the 200s, I think.
Okay.
I'm pulling up now. I mean, Burrow was in like the 700s, but
yeah,
he wasn't Burrow committed to Georgia at one point?
Honestly, not sure, but I will say, like, once you are playing, like, what?
Lions, so 247 had him at 233, but the composite, he was 371.
Okay. I'll say this about Burrow, though. I'm not saying he's going to be great or anything, but once you have played quite a few like meaningful snaps in the SEC as a true freshman, I kind of no longer care that you were ranked in the 700s out of high school. You know what I mean? Like at that point, like if you're playing on a good defensive line in the SEC as a true freshman, Like, I don't really care what you were ranked at that point. Even if he doesn't end up being a great player, like, obviously, I think it's safe to say he was better than the 700s. So,
yeah. Well, it's also nose tackles just always are ranked lower.
yeah.
What happened? So what happened? He decommitted from us in September, and he got crystal ball to Georgia, but then ended up committing back to us on December 2nd and signed December 20th. So Georgia is getting in talks with him. I don't know if they passed on him or what ended up happening there. So, but like, yeah, I mean, he's getting attention from other SEC schools and stuff. So,
yeah,
he had that pedigree.
Yeah.